Hello, welcome to Sexual Alchemy. Today I am deeply honored to have my guest, Vanessa Cuccia, who is the founder and creator of an incredible company called Shock Rubs. Shock Rubs is the original crystal sex toy company, right? That's how you term it. Welcome, Vanessa. It's so nice to see you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. I'm so thrilled to connect with you. And I have to tell you that which you and I have discussed, but I came to your company through a friend and discovered your incredible products, and it's so in alignment with what I'm promoting, and sexual health and wellness and spirituality. And I'm just so impressed with the product you're creating and the consciousness with which you do it. So thank you for joining me in conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure.
Yeah, so I have some questions. I just want to get to kind of, if you could, for our listeners, explain what exactly your product is, and then get into the origins of how you came to it and how you created it, if you would.
Sure. Yeah. Shock Rubs, like you said, is the original crystal sex toy company. So I develop products that are primarily made from pure crystal from the earth and polished in shapes that are sexually stimulating. And the idea came about when I was living in Los Angeles, and I was in my early 20s, and it was basically like this, a combination of things. Also, I feel like a lot of things from my past led me to this work. Even from, a child, I had a very common condition, but a condition nonetheless that I had a low level of progesterone, which caused my vagina to be closed, and I had to have doctors literally open me up. So I've always, even since, being very young, I had like trouble opening up, literally, my yoni, my sexual center. But in Los Angeles in my early 20s, I had been doing a lot of personal work, and I realized that the boyfriend that I had for 6 years was subconsciously training me to believe that pleasure was for him, and pleasure was, I was a sex object myself. I was 6 years younger than him. I, lost my virginity to him, and it wasn't consensual, but I kind of like just fell asleep really, and kind of like just I wanted to be in love with the person that I first had sex with. So I kind of like did this mental trick on myself where I decided to fall in love with this person to get a glimpse of what I had wanted. But, as time went on and I was getting older and not enjoying sex, I think I just had this epiphany of like, oh my goodness, I'm a quarter of my life done, and I want to enjoy sex. I felt very strongly always that was a birthright to feel pleasure. I felt like that was something that we get as humans, right? Mm-hmm. So I made that realization and got out of that relationship. And I also was starting to develop my spiritual side, mainly having to do with energy and crystals. I was studying about crystals and everything. And one day I just went with a friend to this woman's house who had this large collection of crystals. And I was also, by the way, working at an adult shop at this time. That was like one of my things that I did, because I was like, I want to get out of this relationship and start exploring my sexual self. So I took a job at an adult shop called the Pleasure Chest, which is like a famous shop. And everybody was incredible and super encouraging. And knowledgeable, and I had every sex toy under the sun in that store. Steel toys, wood toys, silicone, vibrators, dildos, everything. And I had a big discount, but didn't feel like I wanted anything. And so when I went with my friend to this woman's house who had a large collection of crystals, I had an aha moment that felt like the crystals were telling me, hey, like, it's time for, like, we want to be recognized for our ability to heal sexual trauma. And the name chakras just popped into my head.
Yeah, and we should point out it's spelled CHAKRUBS.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
you know.
Based on the chakra system, which I was studying, and just I love that that system of understanding of our energetic bodies, and it made sense to me. And in that moment, you know, I did feel like I heard the crystals talk to me and say, like, hey, you know, and I blurted it out in front of everybody that I was there with. And, you know, I was just kind of looked at like I had 3 heads, and I didn't speak the rest of the night, but I knew that that's what I needed to do.
Yeah, I got chills with that. But, and isn't that, you know, the truth about, you know, grand ideas, right? That in the moment they seem crazy to others.
Yes.
And yet, you know, it is that kind of like so thinking outside the box and so going into another space of alignment and the commingling of a sex toy, which is considered, you know, it has a certain, you know, prejudice, I guess, in some ways. People have ideas or judgment around it. And crystals of healing and the energetic power of crystals. And can you talk a little more about that too? Because I have studied crystals. I work as a Kundalini yoga teacher, energy work, all that kind of thing. But crystals, what is unique about crystals for people who, like, total laymen, know nothing about crystals? What are the properties that make crystals unique?
So the major components of a quartz crystal in particular is used in all of our technology. So it's because it has the ability to stream a frequency consistently. So that's why we have quartz watches, because it keeps the time very consistent. So it has those capabilities. So there's many reasons why crystals, quote unquote, work to help us access energy within ourselves. And it has to do with multiple things. One is color therapy and frequency of color. So color has, well, everything has a frequency and gives off a different frequency, and color is the same thing. If you look at the frequency of red, you know, the vibration is larger, or, you know, the wave of the frequency is larger than that of purple, which is like shorter, I guess you can say.
Okay, yeah.
So colors literally are giving off a frequency. Crystals, being from the earth, they have a natural color to that is going to give it a different energetic property. So it's the same kind of concept in advertising, right? So McDonald's uses red and yellow because that color combination makes the onlooker hungry. It sparks that energy. So that's one of the things that, you know, gives crystals that ability to work with our energy, is the color. Then it's the molecular structure. Like I said, it's a very consistent vibration that it's giving off. Humans are very sensitive in our energetic field, depending on how much sleep we get, depending on what we ate, depending on, you know, it's so many factors, our energy is going to change. Crystals are more consistent. So when you share a space with a crystal, your energy is becoming more like that of the crystal. And that's just how energy works. We're constantly sharing energy with one another.
Mm-hmm.
And there's many more, depending on, you know, the shape of a crystal, the configuration of the crystal, the ancient uses. For me, the most important aspect of how crystals work is its connection to our subconscious understanding of symbolism.
Mm-hmm.
which kind of is like a broad sense of all these things. So our subconscious mind speaks to us through symbolism. That's like our internal language.
Sure.
And so if we are working with a crystal such as rose quartz, for example, that's pink, maybe, you know, and for chakrams, it has a meaning of it that is, it's a pleasure tool, you know, that you're using a chakra to provide pleasure for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so subconsciously, if you know that this crystal is meant to be a symbol of pleasure, is meant to be a symbol of self-love, every time that you look at that crystal, and when it's married with your intention of expanding your ability for self-love, you are going to strengthen that idea in your subconscious and bring forth that energy every time that you work with the crystal.
Right. And to that extent, I think it's so interesting that then it becomes kind of ritualistic, right? Then it becomes self-pleasure, becomes this sacred ceremony.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. And that's what I love about the way that you explain it, the way you market it, the way you represent it, is this wonderful celebration of self-pleasure as ceremonial, as
Yes.
this is something to go deeper and have an expanded experience of your life and your being as a woman. And it's not all necessarily just for women, I understand too.
Right.
And you know, I know for myself, I'm very sensitive to crystals, and when I'm in, or you know, around a big crystal, I get like zapped by it. I mean, the energy is so intense, you know, and so the intimacy, right, of taking a crystal inside you, there's something very sacred and beautiful about that. And so you offer different varieties of crystal, right? So you have clear quartz, rose quartz, the black obsidian, amethyst, what else?
Green, blue aventurine, rhodonite, white jasper, red jasper, I think jade, nephrite jade. Some of these are only in yoni eggs, but yeah, I think that's mainly it. Yeah.
And each crystal has a certain effect or healing property. So depending on what it is you're looking for, or what it is you want to create in that ritual for yourself, you can kind of custom with what crystal you choose. Yes, so I was turned on to the black obsidian, it's called the Viper, by my dear friend, and have since recommended it to so many friends to the point where people have called me and been like, that thing is sold out. It's so popular. But it's a remarkable healing tool. And I know the black obsidian, right, is about absorbing negative energy, right? It's like drawing out any toxicity or anything that has to do with trauma in the sacral chakra. What I find is so fascinating about what you've created is that it literally is a tool for self-healing in a way that no other sex product is. Is that fair to say?
Yes. No, it is. It is. And thank you for saying that, because you know, there's times where it's this funny thing, because you know, for so long, and when I first started, it was such a new concept that was, you know, I got a lot of backlash for it. Yeah. You know, people, even people that I knew that, you know, I considered friends would be like, not truly understanding it, you know, and saying kind of like rude things, like this is like some hippie BS, you know, like, and stuff like that. And but the thing is that I do see it I give that weight to this product. It does do that, and from doing it for so many years and hearing feedback from, you know, my customers, it is a tool. And I do stress the idea that, you know, we have the ability to do this work with ourselves. You don't need to buy anything. You don't need anything outside of yourself to access this healing. But we as humans always enjoy tools. And that's what this is. This is just a tool, and it's still you. And even the process of deciphering which chakra you want, even in that process, it is self-healing and self-nurturing, because you're starting to understand these things about yourself. What is attracting you, and why am I drawn to the obsidian being one that is said to release negative emotions or emotional implants from past, toxic relationships? Is that something that I need to focus on? So even in that process, it's already doing self-healing work. And then, it just goes further and further the more that you want to go with it. So I do say that this is what that is. Yeah.
Well, and in the same way that like the magic wand or the dowsing rod, it isn't about the dowsing rod finding the water or the magic wand creating the miracle. It's about you using your own power and just having the opportunity to extend it, like the pendulum works with your own intuition, right? Yeah. And so in that way, you're activating your powers of creation, your powers of expression, of pleasure, of entering into a space of divine alchemy. I mean, that's where the magic is, right? When we open that up with the divine feminine and are in that correspondence with the universe, miracles happen. Mm-hmm. There is such an incredible expansive space. Yes. And what my goal in creating this podcast is to open up discussion about that I feel like there's so much unhealthiness, right? There's so much damage still in the arena of sexuality and our awareness of sexuality, the sacral chakra, that most of us, or many of us, and I would say overall as a culture, we're overcoming a lot of shame, trauma, repression, confusion at best around sexuality, right? Mm-hmm. And then we have to undo all that before we get to that neutral space, right? Maybe zero, and then we can expand out into pleasure, right? And so what if, hopefully we can evolve to a state where that is, as you said, how did you put it? A right? A God-given right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And allowing more women to feel that, rather than your experience you had with that ex-boyfriend, right? That you were somehow there for his pleasure.
Yeah.
If anything, he's there for yours.
Well, now I know that. And it took what you said. It took a lot of unlearning. I had to unlearn quite a bit. And it was work with the obsidian, the Zaga chakra, that led me to that place of zero, of neutral, like, let me empty out every programmed belief that I have about sexuality, my sexuality, and let me, rebirth myself. And in that same sense, it's like when you're working with a chakra and you're working with that sexual energy, is creative energy, it's fertile energy that I'm, literally feeling like I'm doing this, but I'm giving birth to a new understanding, a new me. And so what do I want that to be? And it's just, it has a mystical component to it, because you have those kinds of insights that are fun. It's fun to just explore that and feel this power come over you once you unlock these little tricks in your mind. And, especially with the obsidian, like you're saying, it's certain memories are coming to light that you didn't realize. Oh, my mother used to say this to me, or, I had this experience that made me feel shameful. And it's the more you do it, the more you realize we have junk in our heads about sexuality. Yeah. And it becomes this little game that you play with yourself. And then you let that go and you explore more. And it's just this pleasurable experience because of that.
And so when you got pushback from people, what was the pushback, do you think? Do you think there was a certain, how dare you go into sex products, or was it the mixing of the crystals? Like, what was the main resistance?
Yeah, I mean, it was a mixture of things. It was, first of all, I was a young woman. I was 23, 22 when I started doing this. And, here I'm saying, I'm starting this business. And so, some people were like, okay, Vanessa, here's another one of your harebrained schemes. Like, what the hell? And then it was also, people saying this is, like I said, hippie BS, like crystals don't work. Crystals don't do anything. Like, what are you talking about? And then it is also like, how dare you even promote masturbation as sinful? And there's other, things of like, what are you, a witch? Like, what is this? Like, what are you doing? Like, how, this is not right. And, and it's funny, like a lot of the backlash that I got was from spiritual communities. When I said I was like, at the time when I was creating it, I was studying a lot about energy healing and spirituality. One of my teachers recommended that I just put these out as like Reiki tools or something like that. And he was like, maybe don't like push the sexual aspect of it, just like, and I was like, that's not what this is. And, then there were people that were like, well, this has been around, stone, like I've seen like phallic shaped crystals and like, and people being like, this has been around. Like, why are you saying that you, just thought of this? Like, who are you to do this? And I'm like, this is not like, yes, plenty of us I feel have had the desire to put crystals inside of us, or even I had a friend that liked to like put a little stone in her mouth, or like we would put them in our bras. And, I feel like that was a thing, but what I did was make it to where it is today, which is like, it's a normalized thing.
Well, and that's the thing. It's the normalization of it, right? And so, yes, I am a witch, and I'm a good witch, right? In that I am a manifester. I'm an alchemist. I am taking energy and transmuting it into something more beautiful, right?
Yeah.
And so, yes, I didn't invent the wheel here. Probably women in ceremony have been pleasuring themselves with crystals in ages past and in cultures, far and wide. But let's normalize that. Let's take that into a mainstream and say, wow, what are new ways that we can experience this with new awareness, with this new consciousness. And the idea of masturbation is sinful. Wow. I mean, are we in the Middle Ages? Like, what are we talking about, When
I started, it was 8 or 9 years ago now. And I feel like the world has changed so much in that period of time already,
So true.
So crystals were not like, crystals have always been like a healing modality that people, work towards, but like now it's a lot more accepted or in the
much more. Yeah.
And feminine sexuality has become a lot more like when I first started, like even talking about, menstruation on social media platforms was like not done. And now it's become like this normalized thing. Like, hey, yeah, we get periods. Like, let's like just talk about it. It's normal. Like, all these things that were kind of like,
and beyond talk about it, like acknowledge it, like celebrate it, right?
Yes.
I mean, how lucky are we that we get to shed and recreate every moon cycle, that we get to give life and experience the ebb and flow of life within our body in this sacred way. And if we as a culture celebrated that rather than shamed it or shied away from it, what a difference and in our reverence for life we would have.
100%. And I think we've gotten there a little bit closer in the past decade, and still a long way to go. But yeah, those things, it's funny to think about how far we've come in this short amount of time even.
Well, and yes, and how far we had to come, right? Yes. And that's a continual process. And there's still those who wish to pull us back into the dark ages, right? And keep all this undercover and shamed. And you know, controlled, right? And so that's a big thing. That is a big thing, is the control of women's bodies, right? Because buying a crystal dildo for yourself for self-pleasure is such a declarative act of feminine freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And how threatening that is to certain systems and certain cultures that would seek to oppress and control that, right? You know, and I think it's important to say that there's nothing man-hating about it, right? There's no, you know, that we don't also love males' genitalia, right? I mean, it's also, but the opportunity for a woman to go deeper into her own sexuality only helps her partner as well.
100%.
Yeah. Can you talk about that a little bit, like what you're inviting women into in terms of what they then can explore as a partner?
Yeah, and that was another thing that I got too. It was like, what are you trying to replace men? You know, or you know, that was like a comment that I would get a lot. But you know, it's a school of thought. You know, it's the practice of self-love and self-awareness, and through that, understanding of the most intimate part of ourselves, which is our pleasure. Our desire for pleasure is such a vulnerable thing. You know, our desire to feel certain ways is a vulnerable place. And for people that have experienced some sort of sexual trauma, it's even scarier to go there with somebody else. And so for many people, this act of having a tool that allows you to explore the emotions attached to pleasure, emotions attached to this area of your body, orgasm, you know, all these things, when you become aware of what is happening and what you need to feel safe. When you're then with a partner, you bring that awareness. If you bring the awareness to a partner about what you need in order to feel safe, what you need in order to feel turned on, that makes the experience easier to get to that place of vulnerability. Because you already know, it's, you know, and so it's an empowering thing when you say, well, in order for me to feel safe, I need to hear you say, I love you. I need you to make me feel like there's nothing I could do that you would laugh at me about, you know, like those things. And when you spend time with yourself exploring these things, and then what you like physically, I mean, with vibrators, which have a time and a place, and they're wonderful, but it's a quickening aspect, and it's a quickening thing. With a shock rub, it encourages you to slow down, to really understand this like manual aspect of what you like. You know, certain sensations and certain rhythms. And so when you're aware of those components of sexuality, that it's not just like a 5-minute, like, let me just get myself off and go. It's more of a, let me explore this. When you bring that attitude to sex, it releases this pressure of like goal-oriented sex, which is just about orgasm. No, sex is about exploration. Sex is about an experience.
Yeah, and it's about the journey, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And what's so lovely about the sensuality of your product is that it does open up. And what is beautiful about a woman's sexuality is the mystery, is the sensuality, is the eroticism, right? And that's one thing that I kind of push back against our society of, like, the way that we've now become sexually liberated is this pornographied version of things, right? That everything is like hard and fast and get there and show everything, and how intense it can be, and how like in your face, you know, rather than the mystery of what's feminine is what's not shown, right? Is what's felt, what's experienced in an experience between two people, or yourself or whoever. That there is this something that can't be so plainly defined, right? Yeah. And that's what's beautiful about a process of encouraging women to go into their sexuality as a very feminine experience, right?
Mm-hmm. Because I also, to add on that, it does, I think, become this thing of, the 20 ways to turn on your man, or this many ways to have an orgasm, or, all these tips and tricks about how to be good at sex, when I don't think that is a factor. It's not about the tips and tricks that you learn to get good at sex. It's about getting to a place where, like you're saying, it's just the perception of this is an experience, and I'm open to explore and find things in that process that I think makes sex the most enjoyable component. And when you add that component also of spirituality, of energy, it goes beyond what we're feeling in the physical. So it's like, I don't need my toes sucked necessarily, which some people, they like, and that's good. You found that. Do that, and then also realize like what energy is behind that. And is this a component of worship that you like? And what energy does that? And where is that bringing your whole vibration of enjoying this, recognizing that I like to feel you sucking on my toes, because that means that I'm being worshipped, and that makes me feel like a queen, and being a queen makes me feel like I'm connected to something greater than myself. Mm-hmm. And in those ways, it's like we're opening up channels to our spiritual selves, which is the mystery in which we find like the most beautiful purpose in having a human life.
Yes, I love the way you explain that. I do find that kind of, like the old Cosmo, I don't know if anyone reads Cosmo anymore, but that kind of like, 20 ways to please your man, or how to, like, it becomes this like competitive, sexiness, like how, that we make it this standard that we have to, like, I often thought about that, like Sex in the City, right? Like that there was always that, like who can be the most, intensely sexual and the most like blatantly in your face, And the reality is, the most beautiful connected sex is deeply intimate and involves that element of mystery, involves that slowing down and connecting, right? That
I think there's value to it all. Yeah. I think there's value to the pornographic, like, animalistic, like root chakra. That's what I would like say, that sex in the root chakra, where it's just like, I have an urge and I'm going to just get what I want. And, sure. And that has value to it, and people that have been so, like transparent and have shown everything. I think it's more about knowing what's available to you. And in that way, like this transparency and showing things is good. Know what's available to you, but then drop the expectations, which is hard.
Yeah, that's it, right? That's it. Rather than it's supposed to be this way, right? So if we're seeing sex portrayed to us and it's supposed to be a certain way, I love the consciousness that gives people a chance to go into much more personal and layered, right? Multi-level, multi-dimensional ways of experiencing sexuality.
Definitely.
What do you find in terms of your feedback from customers? Like, what is the most common thing you hear, or something that's really interested you that you didn't expect, if I may ask?
Well, one thing is that when people send in their testimonials, it's not usually like 1 to 2 sentences. I'll get like page-long like experiences.
I've seen a few of them. Yeah, they're like love stories. They're
love stories. They're like, oh my goodness, I felt, all these things. A lot of something that's so beautiful that has happened that I maybe wasn't expecting was gender affirmation from people who are transitioning or about to transition. You know, these testimonials come through of saying that chakrams help them affirm their gender, that, you know, they, you know, and it's a multitude of reasons. It's, you know, because chakrams isn't shaped like a phallus, and it's just kind of a neutral shape, you know, that has helped, you know, certain people. So that's something that I wasn't expecting, that I cherish when I get that. And then also people that are using chakrams as dilators for specific like medical conditions, that they're, you know, when you're prescribed dilators, they're usually these plastic, you know, lightweight, like instruments, and chakrams are the original shape. The slim and the original shape are double-sided, so they are thinner at one end and they get wider at the other. So they're the perfect dilation tool, because you can, you know, use the smaller end and then work your way up to the larger end. And, you know, that was just this other kind of like hidden use for chakrams, that when people tell me that they couldn't use the doctor prescribed dilators, but when they use the chakrams, their body, like, you know, just accepted it so much more. Yeah. And that was so beautiful. And then I'll get a lot of people that say that they have their first orgasms ever with the chakrams, or experience ejaculation for the first time ever with chakrams. So definitely a plethora of things, and it's all just beautiful. And of course, people that will come to me and talk about their sexual trauma that they're addressing with chakrams, and how much it helped them. And, you know, I've gotten things from people that have had abortions, people that have experienced sexual assault and rape, and that are working with chakrams to heal these things. And it's wonderful. It's humbling. It's cool that this is like happening. You know, it has such a wide array of like uses that it's, yeah.
Well, and what's so amazing to me, I think also it probably feels, and I can say this from my experience with it feels so much more organic, right, than something made of plastic or metal, or, you know, a substance that is, you know, more man-made, that there's this organic nature, that you are really communing with nature.
Yes.
In the experience. And in that way, it feels safer, you know? I think it's what feels much more like natural and yeah, organic.
It's literally nature. So
it literally, you know, is nature. Yeah.
It's like you say, you know, if you're feeling down to go out into nature, this is like, you can literally get nature inside of you, you know, and it's just like, that's what it is. Yeah. And it's
and then also you really do, I mean, in terms of how crystals work, you infuse your energy with the crystal, and it becomes this symbiotic relationship that's so beautiful and powerful.
You bond with it in that way.
Yeah.
The orgasms that you're sharing with it are held in the crystal's memory, and it's,
yeah, and that's the portals that are opened up in that realm. I mean, orgasm really is a portal, right? It's this huge expansive energy, and so when you engage in that with the high frequency of the crystal, it's a whole other level of expansion. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I am so pleased that you exist, and that you followed your instinct and you created this. Yeah. I really think it's so exemplary for anyone listening who has a crazy notion that was even shot down by many, that, you know, it is, when there is a need for something, you feel the calling. And so it's really beautiful that you answered it, and you are helping to heal so many people with it.
Thank you.
Yeah. And it is a, you know, a ripple effect that's going to keep going, and that healing will expand out. So if people wanted to order your fabulous products, how can they find you?
We're on, our website is chakrubs.com. So CHAKRUBS.com. Mm-hmm. And then they could also follow our Instagram or Twitter, it's at Chakrubs. And if, we just touch the surface of these things, but I do have a book out called Crystal Healing and Sacred Pleasure, which really goes into depth about all these things that we're talking about. So that's available on my website and also on Amazon, Crystal Healing and Sacred Pleasure.
Oh, beautiful. And and that's on the Chakra website.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Amazing. Vanessa, it's such a pleasure to speak with you. And I hope this is the first of many that we can connect on here, and we can go into more depth and more specificity as time goes on. But it's really an honor to get to meet you and talk with you. So I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Libby.
Vanessa Cuccia of Chakrubs. Bless you.